The Women's Fund for Scotland is Scotland's only dedicated fund for women and girls. I'm Susan Morrison, and this is our podcast where we talk to inspiring women improving the lives of those women and girls today. In this episode, we meet Joyce from Grace Chocolates. I'm very excited because this is 3 of my favourite things altogether, which is sort of fair play for women, caring for women, and chocolate. Your organisation, Joyce, is Grace Chocolates. Now, first of all, fabulous name, but can you just tell us a little bit about them?
I started the organisation in 2017. I had moved to Stirling. I'm Glasgow born and bred, but moved to Stirling and was looking for an opportunity to be involved in the local community. And it was just after the Angelini report, which had been, as a result, very sadly, of the number of suicides, HMP Cornton Vale. And one of the recommendations in the Angelini report was a family hub centre. And I started volunteering at the Hub Centre to become a bit more integrated into the community, having moved to Stirling. Very quickly, I realised that we are all one decision from this side of the fence or the other, and was at a stage in my career where it just felt the right thing to do. And so the reason that we're called Grace is there's a few reasons round about that. One of them is there but for the grace of God go I. Mm-hmm. Because realising that we are all one decision of this side of the fence or the other. Amazing grace, in that one of the definitions of grace is another chance without having earned it. And that is very much what we are about, in that we give the women another chance without them having to do anything, which is quite a different approach than perhaps they're used to if they have been inside prison. But we support women both who have received custodial sentences and non-custodial sentences. So that might be community payback orders or a fine. So that's a big, long explanation.
No. One of my favourite phrases, it's one of those mantras that I whisper to myself under my breath when things get tough, is the phrase grace under fire, which I've always admired. People who can stay calm and stay in control. And it's more than calm and control, it's also that emanate that sense of grace. And that's why I think your name is so wonderful. But I have to say, Joyce, I mean, many of us read that report, but not many of us decided, I am going to set up an entire charity to deal with this.
Well, there you go. If there's going to be a difficult way of doing things, I tend to pick it. So,
oh, you did mention you were Glaswegian, right?
I am a Glaswegian, yes.
Yeah, ditto. So we are always kind of looking for a fight, really, and if it can be a constructive one, then that's not to the best, really.
Somebody recently called me a social disruptor, and I wear that with pride. I think if you're a Glaswegian and you get called a social disruptor, you've kind of made it in life, have you not?
Oh, you kind of have. My memories of Glaswegian social disruptors probably based on things like my granny and being on like a bus in Glasgow one day. There was a fight breaking out, and this wee woman, tinier than me, just stood up and went, "Hold on there, son, stop that!" And he just sat down. And that was the first I realised the power of a female Glaswegian voice and what it can do. It's still astonishing to me that you decided to turn around and to work with a group of women who don't get an awful lot of kindness out of society, do they?
Yes, I would say that you're very right in that. Can I tell you a wee story about
Sure.
one of the times we were working with the ladies in Lilius, which is the community custody unit in Maryhill in Glasgow, not a million miles from where I was born. And we were delivering a health and wellbeing workshop and some chocolate making workshop. And it's about how we do things rather than what we do. But at the end of the session, one of the ladies wanted to give everybody a hug before we left. And she asked, "Can I give you a hug?" And she said, and I quote, "Because nobody ever does anything nice for the likes of us." And that broke my heart.
Yeah. I mean, you said that they're but for the grace of God, but some of these girls and women never stood a chance, did they?
Not from the hour and minute they were conceived, no.
No, so it's grand that somebody's finally, and there's so little out there to try to help, to reach out. But what gets me is, and once again, we're going back to the social disruptor thing, is you sat there and went, right, nobody else is doing it, so I'd better do it.
I don't even know if it was as premeditated as that. I think it was...
Are you telling me you didn't have a plan? You just rushed in?
Well, it seemed a good idea at the time.
There's a lot of women standing in a divorce court that are saying that. You decided to do this, but what I don't quite understand is why chocolate? I mean, I love chocolate, don't get me wrong, but
It wasn't premeditated. My background is in corporate world. I don't have a chocolatier background. I don't have a background in social care. But as I said, it was about the women. And then the reason for chocolate, we were on holiday in Italy. We thought we were going to visit a family in Italy. And the guidebook said, if you're going to visit a family, take along, quote, a box of exquisitely wrapped chocolates. And that phrase kind of stuck with me. We came back home and we were going out to visit friends. And I thought, I'll go and get a nice box of chocolates to take as a gift.
Yeah.
But other than Thornton's or Marks and Spencer's or whatever, there was no exquisitely wrapped chocolates. So I made a comment to my husband and I said, I'm going to make them myself and I'm going to get the women to help me. And that's how it came about. That's why chocolate.
Right, that is incredible. I know a lot of people who would just have turned around and said, oh, well, I'll just buy some fudge instead. But you said, no, I am going to learn, because you'd have to learn to make chocolate.
Yes.
That sounds really difficult to me.
I was very, very fortunate in that I was introduced to a lady who had previously run a social enterprise, a chocolate company. It was no longer still running, but she had the skills, and she sat me down in a hotel in Rutherglen and she said, right, get out your notebook and your pen. And she said, here's all the suppliers you need to contact. Here's what you need. Here's the ingredients you need. Here's this, here's that, here's the next thing. And then she disappeared out my life. So I took all this information, went on YouTube, contacted the suppliers, got some ingredients delivered to my home, went into the kitchen and followed the YouTube videos. I have now since then got some proper chocolate making training, but that was how it started. Made lots of mistakes, which my husband loved.
Yeah. I should actually explain something, Joyce, which is if I step into the kitchen, my entire family goes on to DEFCON 4 and sort of gets me because I can't cook and I just stare at the cooker in mild bafflement because I'm not entirely sure what it's for. But I can understand making the chocolate, right? You're going to make the chocolate. That's really cool. You've read the report and you realise that women's life chances when they come out or they've been touched by the criminal justice system are not great. But why did you decide to combine the two?
I suppose the short answer is it seemed a good idea at the time. And why not? What really, really turned it for me was I was back in the corporate world for a year while I was setting up the organisation. And I had this idea and I spoke to one of my colleagues about whether I should do it or not. And she said to me, when you're 80 and sitting in your rocking chair, what do you want to tell your grandchildren? Either I once had a great idea and did nothing about it, or I once had this idea and did something about it, and here's what happened. And that was the final deciding factor in I want to do this. I just want to hold my nose and jump and go for it. And that's what I did.
I'm trying to work out if we can condense that to put on a t-shirt because that's brilliant. What a piece of life advice. If you have a good idea, do it. Although, can I suggest anyone who's listening, if you have a good idea, could you ask Joyce first? Because if it's a good idea, like jumping off a cliff or something, I think you should run it past Joyce. But it must have been difficult to persuade even the authorities or whoever it is that deals with these women when they come out from the criminal justice system that you could help.
No is the short answer to that. I spoke with somebody at Cornton Vale and told them what I was planning on doing. And they were so incredibly supportive. They just got it at a fundamental level. And our first lady was a lady who was coming towards the end of her sentence at Cornton Vale, and who at that time they had the independent living units, and she was in the independent living unit, which is before we did the women's estate and HMP Stirling was built. HMP Cornton Vale had houses outside the perimeter fence, and women, after very, very strict and stringent risk assessment, may be allowed to start learning to live independently, hence the name independent living units. And this was a lady who was about 2 or 3 months away from the end of her sentence, living in the independent living unit. So under license, she was able to come and spend her day with us, learning how to make the chocolates. But as I say, it's not about the chocolates, it's how we do things. rather than simply making chocolates. But that was how it started. And I am so grateful for that person, for the support and the trust that they placed in us.
So that's a sort of fundamental point there, Joyce. You've conquered making chocolate, but it's how you do things, and it must have been that caught the attention of that person at Cornton Vale. How do you do things?
Our values are primarily respect. We do a risk assessment of women that are joining us here, but we don't ask about their convictions. Most other services that the women come across will be asking for their story. If and when the woman feels ready to tell us their story, we will listen and we will laugh together and we will cry together. Because of all the women that I have met, there are two things that the women share: low self-esteem and low self-worth. Everybody's story is individual and their circumstances are different, but that is the two aspects. So what we do and how we do things is help to build their self-esteem and their self-respect and their confidence. And that makes the difference. What we give them is hope. And that is fundamentally what they're looking for. Somebody to tell them that they are not bad people because they made a mistake in their lives. Because let's be honest, who out of us has not made a mistake in our life? And that's why we're about giving them another chance.
Yeah. Tell me, the Women's Funds for Scotland gave you some funding during the big COVID lockdown.
Yes. We stopped production for a period of time, but because we have a social purpose and because we are a food producer, we were able to open back up with production, but we had to put all the regulations in place, which made things quite difficult. We also wanted to continue to support the women because many of the other organisations, both statutory and third sector, stopped support during that time, and we wanted to keep going. I remember in one of our very early days, nobody had heard of Zoom in those days. What on earth was Zoom?
Yeah.
And the women hadn't the skill set to be able to join us. So my colleague was in her home online. I was at my home online. We had some of the women on the telephone. She had some of the women on her telephone. We were holding the phones up to our screens because we wanted to be able to engage and to keep the women going. So we did, in the very early days, we did quizzes and we did just chat, and that helped break the isolation and the loneliness that the women were feeling. And that was huge. That was absolutely enormous. We were also able to get them some crafts. Some of them chose to learn how to knit or to crochet. And some of them, it was the colouring books, the mindfulness colouring books. We were able to get some of them and get them sent directly to their home. And just to let them know that we were thinking about them. And that made a huge difference. So we are so grateful for the funding that we got to be able to support the women during that time.
That is another definition of grace, actually, is the giving out, to be bountiful. That's a medieval definition. So you were actually being bountiful. That's lovely.
I think at the time we just wanted to try our best. And as I say, it was very rudimentary, but at least we were there.
Yeah.
And we were just there for the women because that's what we do. It's not about the chocolate, it's about the women. We don't get up in the morning to make chocolate. We get up in the morning to support the women.
I would get up in the morning to eat chocolate, that's for sure.
Well, there's a few. I'm sitting in the office at the moment looking over at the table, the lunch table, and there's a little pile of things that are not quite perfect enough to go out. So I'll be having a wee afternoon snack after we're finished our conversation.
I think you should definitely eat those chocolates, Joyce, because otherwise they will be feeling unloved and unwanted. And everybody knows that if you have to eat chocolate like that, that is a bountiful and graceful act, and there are no calories in them.
Thank you very much. I shall take that.
I completely made that up, but it sounded authoritative. But it's very, working with women who've been involved in the criminal justice system must bring particular challenges.
I suppose you could look at it like that. But for me, it's an absolute and utter privilege. It is humbling. It makes me feel so grateful for what I have and for the life that I have had. And rewarding is a funny word. Do you know, people say, oh, it must be so rewarding. No, I'm just very grateful. And I'm grateful that I can support women. And I'm grateful that I have the capacity to be able to support them in the way that I do. And it's not just me, it's a team. We're absolutely a team. At this time of year, there's 9 of us. and we're all working together. I'm really proud to be able to say this year our seasonal staff are all women who have touched the justice system, and we're able to offer them paid employment, which means that they then have the opportunity of a reference to be able to add to their CV the skill sets that they've picked up here, and we would provide a reference for them when they go on to get other work. So I'm really pleased that we're able to do that this year.
Oh, that adds so much to their life chances. Showing experience, and you giving them a reference, it's just that on their CVs and everything would be absolutely phenomenal. Tell me, how do women who come out of the system, are they referred to you, or do they self-refer? How do you wind up working with them?
We will take self-referrals. The women can hear about us, particularly from other women who are in the justice system. Perhaps if they're going along to other support groups, maybe if they're living with addictions, they might hear about us from other women that we're supporting. And we will happily work with women who are living with addictions as long as they are actively engaging with the appropriate professionals. We're not always the right service, depending where the woman is on her journey at that point in time. That doesn't mean that later on she's at a different place and it's the right time then, but we will work with women who are living with addictions. So they might hear about us there. They might hear about us. We were recently on STV, so they might hear about us there. Podcasts or interviews, or we have connections with other organisations that are supporting the women, or from the criminal justice workers, or, as I say, from self-referrals. They're very welcome to lift the phone, send us an email, Facebook us, WhatsApp us, anything at all. We'll take that referral and we will happily pick up with the women. We offer 4 services. We offer the opportunity to come into the kitchen in person on work experience. We've got Making Positive Changes programme. We do health and wellbeing and mentoring online, which means that women across Scotland can engage, that it's not simply in the Stirling area where we're based. And that came about, that's one of the blessings that came about as a result of COVID, that we are able to support women across Scotland, and we support them as far as the Northern Isles, Caithness, Orkney, Moray, right down through the country to the Central Belt. So that's another positive, that we can support women, and we do support women across the entire country.
This is exhausting, but no wonder you need the chocolate, because you need the energy to keep going.
The wee sugar boost.
The wee sugar boost, absolutely. Tell me, but the demand to help women who have touched the criminal justice system is huge. So I have a feeling that all you can do now is keep expanding.
We're on a growth trajectory at the moment.
Yeah.
We certainly would like to engage with more women, and there are opportunities for the women to engage with us. So if anybody's listening to this and feels that they know somebody or they themselves would benefit, then we would love to hear from them.
Yes, and the Women's Fund for Scotland, of course, will still be there for you as much as it can be. But I think another message we want to say, if there's anybody out there who's got funding or who's looking to buy chocolates,
absolutely, please go onto the website and have a wee look.
So finally, Joyce, I just want to ask you, you know the family that you were supposed to take the exquisitely wrapped box of chocolates to?
We met them in a cafe.
But if there's anybody out there who needs an exquisitely wrapped box of chocolates, then you should go onto the Grace Chocolates website, which I've been looking at, and I'm just drooling here. It's not a good look for a woman of my age. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and listening to this story. I hope you've been inspired. And if you would like to support the Women's Fund for Scotland, search for us online and listen out for our other podcast episodes.